Hello and welcome to another episode of the Call to Adventure podcast with me, George Beasley. I hope you're all good listeners. So we're edging ever closer to the end of lockdown, which is incredibly exciting. So I hope you've got lots of fun adventures planned. If not, we've got all sorts of awesome trips that we'd love you guys to join us on. Everything from surfing to stand-up paddleboarding, rock climbing to mountaineering, and even a bit of wild camping. So head over to calltoadventure.uk to find out more. Today, I'm joined by my co-host and partner in crime, Becca Heaps, the founder of Tench Air. So if you're keen to rent out a tent or book a tent, then you can head over to tenchair.com. So now on to today's pod. In this episode, we're chatting with Jarvis Smith, the co-founder of My Green Pod, a marketplace for leading sustainable companies with everything from health and beauty products to food and drink, clothing to home and garden products. And they even plant a tree in the tropics with every purchase. So without further ado, let's get cracking. So first, let's just check in with co-host extraordinaire, Becca. How are things going, Becca?
Hello. I'm good, thank you. Yeah. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Not bad at all. This is just been packing today for moving back to England on Friday after being in Sweden for a while. So yeah, it's been really awesome to be here. The nature, the outdoors is just really, really cool. Super liberal wild camping laws and all that good stuff. Not many people. I think there's...
Yeah, sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's a really good spot. I think there's something like 9 million people here, and the landmass is about 3 times that of England. So lots and lots of space, and they're all super into the outdoors. So yeah, it's been really good. Have you come across anything interesting in the news or any articles or anything this week?
Well, there's been all that kerfuffle about Uber, hasn't there? But I'm not exactly sure what the outcome has been as yet.
Is that the thing as to whether they are treated as employees or contractors? And they kind of lost the lawsuit and they said, yeah, you are employees, so you have to give them a few more benefits.
Yeah, and they have to have above the minimum wage. And there's this whole argument about when they are available to start driving and when they actually start driving. So, if you worked at Marks and Spencer's and you have to be there at 9:30, then you get paid from 9:30, whether there's a customer or not. And so Uber drivers are saying they should be paid to, from the point that they check in, basically, that they're available. So, yeah.
Interesting. Well, I think that's going to be a major spanner in the works for Uber's business model if they get anything kind of more punitive. But yeah, interesting stuff. So what did I come across this week? I came across the Platypus newsletter. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Platypus News. It's kind of satirical environmentalism, and it's really good, actually. It's very funny and kind of tackles serious environmental issues, but is just very funny. So a few good pieces on there. One of them that I saw today was economists stumped, if the market's so good, how come it destroyed nature? And that was a pretty good one. And kind of coming from a finance background, it was interesting. And they were talking about how people always praise the market and how wonderful it's been. And it is really good if you're somebody in the Western world, but otherwise it's pretty awful, and especially not good if you're a non-human. So there's some other ones to check out if listeners are interested. There was one, they've got some pretty interesting titles. One of them was Jesus in Bestiality Scandal Denies Affair with Mary Pangolin, which was like very... They're often better than that. That one's pretty lowball. Then there was Milking Psychedelic Toads, the next logical step for the wellness industry. So yeah, it's all satirical, which is but yeah, some good reads and actually some good stuff in there. So listeners, head over to the...
I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, take a look at the Platypus newsletter.
What is it, online? Is it digital?
Yeah. So I think it's called the platypusnews.com, something like that. I'll put the platypusnews.com. So I'll put the link in the show notes. Okay, dokes. Good stuff, Becca. Well, glad everything's good. So now let's kick off the pod. So yeah, we're joined with Jarvis. Jarvis, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good, thank you. That was fascinating. I'm going to definitely tune into the Platypus news around. It sounds much more interesting than any news that I get to read or see.
Yeah, it sounds fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does.
I think it's a really good way to keep people engaged with this stuff, because if it's always kind of dreary and it's the end of the world and we're all terrible, it can turn a lot of people off and be not particularly engaging. Whereas if you use comedy but then kind of Trojan horse in the serious stuff as well, it keeps people going back to it.
Yeah, I guess I'm at the other end of the scale. It is doom and gloom, and we are all going to die unless we fix the problem. So, horses for courses.
Well, yeah, I think we probably need a bit of everything, right? We need the reality check.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. If that was the case, I definitely wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today, which is trying to inspire people to make those small changes that we need. So no, I was just a bit of tongue in cheek.
Well, yeah, it's really interesting actually. Like I think it is really good. You see somebody like Greta Thunberg, and she is very much like I'd probably say a bit doom and gloom, but I think that's good to have sometimes. And she always talks about how like baby steps for babies, and we're not doing enough, and anything less than really solving the problem is just not acceptable. And I think that is really useful to have sometimes. But I think it also, as humans, we require at least some hope in order to make us still kind of put the effort in to make the change. So I think probably a mix of everything, like most things, the middle way is the wisest way. But
yeah, agreed. And the thing is, Greta Thunberg, she follows the science, and if you are just going to follow the science, then it's true what she's saying. It's a fact based on the science.
Yeah.
The problem is,
I think the difficulty arises when if people get scared, you get paralyzed, and then people can't do anything. So
see, I'm not so sure about that. But that's partly because we're not caught in the chaos at the moment. At the moment, it's just a storyline. I think when we get put into the chaos, which is what's just happened with COVID, people acted very quickly. So I'm not so sure that is the case about the paralysis. I think we're incredibly, agile beings that respond to a circumstance, and so I guess that's probably what humanity is waiting for, is just for the reality to happen, and then see if we can quickly enough respond. And that's a shame, because actually, if we started really dealing with stuff now, it might not be so chaotic.
Yeah. There are so many reasons why it's better to act now than later. I mean, if you look at it purely from an economic standpoint, it's far cheaper to act now than it is to wait until shit really hits the fan and then you have to react. It's much better to invest in resilience and adaptation now than it is to wait until everything goes pear-shaped. But unfortunately, the nature of the problem of climate change is that whilst it's way more, and all the other environmental problems that we face too, they are kind of longer term scale, and they're a bit more ethereal, like you mentioned, Jarvis, whereas COVID happened overnight and it can affect you now. And so the problem of COVID is far smaller and far less complex. But as humans, we're just hardwired to think, to prioritize things that are going to happen fairly soon in the future. Whereas the kind of longer term stuff, and that's good from a keeping a kind of caveman alive point of view, because you shouldn't be worrying about like what's going to happen in 10 years when you can't even feed yourself tomorrow. And we still have the hangover of that. But I think there's so many things that are really important to, like, policy should therefore be reflected of the fact that we know humans have this psychological downfall of not being able to really think long term, not being able to take short term pain even for long term benefit. So it's a huge topic, and maybe we'll get into it a little bit further down the line. But whilst we kind of already dug into it, I do like to start with a few quick fire questions. So these are a little bit silly, but people just kind of get to know you and us. And Becca, I'm actually going to ask you these ones as well. So,
no.
Yay. I'm not on my own.
So Jarvis, well, this is actually Becca's question first. But Becca, we haven't asked you yet. So Jarvis, what is your favorite cheese?
Brilliant. Oh, I'm really loving answering this, because for a long time, when my daughter was born, who's now 5, she came in with a dairy intolerance. So we very quickly found out that, we had to eliminate dairy from our lives. So we became vegan, quote unquote vegan, to the best of our ability in the way that we eat our food. So cheese was one of the hardest things to give up. I mean, I was like, I'm a big cheese lover. But we did, because it was in solidarity for our newborn daughter, and so now, thankfully, there are the most amazing vegan cheeses, which we're not allowed to call vegan cheese. We have to call them V's, apparently. So there are a few different brands that we get, and they're all pretty good now. But I tell you what, 5 years ago, when veganism was quite a new thing, they were like eating plastic. And they're not now. Yeah. They're super tasty. You got smoky cheese, and you got blue cheese, and you got mozzarella, and all of this kind of plant-based, coconut-based fake cheese. So there we are.
Yeah, it tastes way better. We switched to oat milk a while ago. Oat milk is massive here in Sweden, and
yeah, that's all I drink is oat
really,
milk.
really good. And yeah, I thought exactly like you. It used to taste pants, all that stuff. But we also moved from like normal butter to. It's often like one brand just nails the taste, and then you just go for that one, and then everyone else lagging behind a little bit. But somebody, maybe Oatly, or there's a vegan butter one here that we have. Everyone else is all right, but theirs is like really, really good.
Yeah, agreed. We've got this one perfect butter that to me tastes like real butter on toast, and it's probably because I'm so far removed from that real taste of butter that my mind has just built this kind of, this is yummy, just like butter used to be. But it is actually a good mate, and you can only buy it in certain places, and I can't even remember the name because Katie does the shopping. So excuse me, but I know it's got a black lid and it tastes delicious.
We'll have to taste them all and find out. Becca.
Find the black lid one.
Becca, favourite cheese?
So I can't narrow it down to just the one, but I'm going to say my favourite summer cheese would be mozzarella with the tomato and the basil and maybe a little bit of balsamic vinegar. But coming into Christmas, I'd go for a richer cheese with some nice chutney or even some figs or grapes.
Do you like the stinky stuff or not really?
Yeah, I do, but the rest of the family doesn't, so it's mostly less stinky.
You don't want to be the only person eating the stinky cheese either. It's either all or nothing. Everyone's got to be on board or no one. Okay, good stuff. Question 2, Jarvis, Bear Grylls or Ray Mears?
Oh, Bear Grylls all day long.
Oh, really? How
come? Partly because I've met him and he was a really nice guy, and I just love that. If I was to live my life again, if I knew what I knew now and I was coming back and having another go, I would definitely go into the SAS. That would be the thing that I would want to do. So, for that, he's my hero.
Very cool. Yeah, that was my childhood dream. I remember telling everybody in Careers Day and all that stuff through school that I was going to be in the SAS, and they were just like, "No, you're not." I was so into it when I was younger. I used to do all sorts of weird things, like try and hold my breath in the swimming pool for as long as I could and stand outside in the rain and condition myself as like a 13-year-old boy or 14-year-old boy. And then, I got a bit older and then realized, because I like the idea of all the challenge and all of that stuff and being like the elite soldier. But then as I learned a bit more about the kind of politics of you actually go and have to kill people in a war, I was like, I don't want to do that bit. I just want to like run around in a field and get muddy and carry heavy things in the rain and all that stuff. So, but I think it would be a really exciting life. I think very, very exciting stuff. And he gets a lot of shit, Bear Grylls, but getting into the SAS is certainly no mean feat. So very cool. How about you, Becca?
Bear all day long. All day long.
Really? No, we've got no wholesome outdoor bushcraft cookers.
You're surprised with these answers, aren't you? With these as eco warriors, you're kind of like, what is going on? They've really messed with my program here.
Okay, number 3, tent or camper van?
Both. Am I allowed to say both?
You can say both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd have the camper van for my wife and I and stick all the kids in the tent.
It's perfect.
Ideal. Yeah, there we go. So some tips for camping with kids. Stick them in the tent. Becca?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have to say
Yeah.
tent, being founder of Tench Air. I mean, it's much nicer, you know. I don't know how you can be stuck in a tiny little camper van. I was hoping
hold
Ed
on.
was going to be here so we could have a better
small.
debate. Go on.
Sorry, Becca. I wasn't thinking small camper van. I was thinking Winnebago. Yeah, you know, I wasn't. Yeah,
50-foot American RV style, just like one of those giant ones.
Yeah, one of those babies. Meet the fuckers
fair
kind of
enough.
vibe.
Yeah. We saw loads of those when we were out on our bike trip in Alaska, and I did think like they look amazing, especially to travel somewhere like Alaska where it's just nobody's there. It's enormous, but super duper comfy. We went in a few of them and just amazing. They're expensive pieces of kit though. They are just like they are just like a house. They really are a house on wheels.
Yeah. Yeah, we travelled across Australia, not across Australia, across the Northern Territory of Australia in one. There was how many? 6 of us. So it was, it was a bit of a beast. And I have to be honest, I much prefer camping. Like I put me in a tent all day long. I would camp. But when you've got
Jarvis,
children,
you came through in the end. Well done.
Yeah, no, I
of
love
course,
camping.
Tent all the way.
It's the best thing ever. But I think you gave me a choice, so I just went for both. Let's live abundant.
Love that.
Okay, number 4. If you could bring back any extinct animal, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one.
T-Rex.
The T-Rex. I think you're more of an anarchist than an eco warrior, aren't you? Why the T-Rex? Just for the entertainment or the?
My daughter would be just really thrilled the fact that she'd get to see a real dinosaur. I mean, just to see the joy on her face before we got eaten would just be. I think I could die happily.
Very good. Becca?
I think I'd have to go for a woolly mammoth.
Woolly mammoth.
Oh, I reckon you just trumped me there.
Have you seen?
But I'll take that.
Have you seen the guy, the very eccentric geneticist who wants to bring back the woolly mammoth? I think he may be from Oxford Uni. I'll have to find him and link him in the show notes. But super intelligent guy. But he is hell bent on bringing back the mammoth. He's like, this is a great idea. We can use it for. There's so much meat on them.
Me and him should get together.
Yeah. You two would have a ball. But yeah, I'll have to find the story. But interesting stuff. Okay.
You could put a mini tent on one, couldn't you? Like you do on a Land Rover or a Jeep or something. You just put a mini tent on the back of a mammoth, and that would be like just your new existence. It'd be amazing. I'm up for that.
Imagine going to school on one.
It'd be so cozy as well. You could use his fur as the bed.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, like laying on soft straw.
How much bigger is a woolly mammoth than an elephant?
Yeah, I don't know, but let's say at least 5 times bigger.
Wow! Imagine riding that, like rocking up to school on that bad boy, and you've got the first one. Like nobody else. Your daughter rocks up to school on a woolly mammoth, and everyone's like, "Nice, that your dad's cool."
Yeah.
and you get off, you'd be like, what are you looking at? Nothing to see here.
Yeah.
I'm all in. Sounds good. Okay, great stuff. Well, Jarvis, I think for some people listening will kind of be familiar with your story, but for those who aren't, can you tell us a bit about your journey into sustainability?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I've always been connected with nature. It's one of the things that I think really got me through the crazy experience of childhood. But there was one kind of, I guess, really pivotal moment is that I was invited onto a TV show back in 2006 called Dumped, which was on Channel 4. And it's where 10 individuals were invited to live in an extreme environment that was linked to an eco challenge. So we didn't know where we're going or what we were doing, but I was the only one asked out of the 11 people. In fact, 10, one person left, so there was 11 altogether. That were, I was invited by the researchers because they knew I was a bit of a kind of tree-hugging hippie, and I was really into kind of spiritual work at that time. So they just thought I was an interesting character. anyway, so because it was not Big Brother or, you know, some kind of horrible type TV show that I definitely wouldn't go on to, I said yes. And we ended up living on a landfill just outside, in fact, in Croydon, which was a set, but it was made from a real landfill, which is right next to the landfill. We had to live there for 3 weeks. And essentially the show was to highlight what is one person's waste, or, you know, they think they've thrown away. It's another person's, you know, resource, right? And, you know, you got to look at places like, you know, I guess the places in Mumbai, you know, Dharavi and places like that, where people do live in rubbish tips, and in Kenya and various other places around the world. So that was quite a shocking experience for me, because we embraced the experience as if it was, you know, some kind of post-apocalyptic disaster like New Orleans, or, you know, the tsunami had hit or something like that. So we kind of treated it like that. And there was a pivotal moment on the 3rd week when a local dustbin truck went round to collect the rubbish and kind of come and dumped it on our what was now our home. You know, we'd built somewhere to sleep and somewhere to shit and somewhere to shower and somewhere to, you know, kind of do all the things that you need to do to survive as a tribe on this kind of environment. And so this rubbish truck came and dumped the stuff, and we had to put on this protective clothing, you know, kind of COVID masks and protective gloves and white overalls and the whole thing, and start siphoning through this stuff that had just been collected from the local streets. And we had to basically decide what could be recycled, what couldn't be recycled, and I think it was glass was the other one. And so after about 20 minutes of doing this, I literally felt physically sick. Like I've had a really bad headache, and just, you know, like the kind of day after your 18th birthday where you're just toxic. I just felt awful. Now, because I'd had this kind of shamanic training that I had before, you know, this experience, I was used to kind of releasing energy and replacing energy and replenishing my, you know, the way I was feeling with something new. And so I said to the TV cameras, I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to go and, you know, kind of clear this toxicity. I laid on the earth and just started, sounds really wacky now when you look back at it, but I laid on the earth, started kind of releasing this toxic energy that I was feeling. And what I do to replenish myself is draw this energy up from the earth, right, to kind of cleanse me. And as I did that, I got this, you know, like a bolt of lightning type shock. And I heard these words, and it said, how you are feeling now is how I feel. It's what you're doing to me. I'm sick, and I need your help to tell people that it's humans that are causing this damage. And it was like, oh my God, it was such a wake up call. It gave me purpose. It gave me, you know, values. It gave me everything that I needed to do what I do today. And so I committed to camera that I would dedicate my whole life's work, not only my personal, but my business life, to educating and inspiring people about the damage that we were doing to the planet in the way that we lived. And that was literally the moment. I went away from that, and I went back to my publishers and I said, I want to launch an ethical lifestyle magazine. Are you up for it? And they were up for it. And so we did that. And then I took the project to National Geographic a year later and launched, you know, the world's biggest ethical lifestyle magazine with National Geographic. And then we realized we didn't have much of a sustainable business model. And so we developed that to become the magazine that we do today with The Guardian. So, you know, it was all about that wake up moment that I had. And, you know, there were lots of stories about people, you know, near death experiences, car crash, you know, whatever it might be. Thankfully, mine was less dramatic. I just got a bit of a headache and felt a bit sick. And that was my pivotal turning point, that I got to, you know, feel connected with the earth in a way that perhaps most people are disconnected from our, you know, the earth, which I believe is a conscious being that provides everything that we exist on. So, yeah, that was that was the beginning of the journey.
Wow.
That's go on, George.
Sorry, go ahead, Becca, if there's something.
Well, I just think that's such an incredible experience. Like, the 3 weeks living on a dump, basically, and then having an enlightened moment, and you can totally remember that point. That's an incredible thing.
Yeah.
And interestingly, so you're going back to 2006. Do you feel like people are changing more now? Because I imagine you've been banging your head against a brick wall for quite some time.
I mean, the thing is, when one aligns with a true purpose like that, which for me it is a true purpose, then it doesn't matter. You've got a mission, and you've got to solve them. You've got to fulfill that mission. So, what's really interesting is you're right, it's 2006, and then the show aired in 2007, which gave me a profile. So I was able to pick up the phone to any CEO of any sustainable company and say, hey, it's Jarv from the dump. You might have seen it, you might not have seen it, but it gave me an inroad to speak to everybody at top level. But the point of that is that, back then there weren't really many companies that dealt with sustainability. Now it's a huge topic. There weren't many people that even cared about or even understood the word sustainability. Definitely climate change wasn't on the agenda in 2007. We knew environmentalists and we knew that there was a bit of an issue, but we didn't know it was climate chaos that we know today. So my purpose, if you like, was to try and inform and inspire people. And what we ended up doing is becoming pioneers and thought leaders in the space. And, all the big news channels followed us, from the BBC to all the mainstream newspapers, the whole thing. So we were the only ones, and actually we weren't the only ones, actually. There was The Ecologist and a few others, but we were one of the only ones putting this news out as a USP every day, right? But the point of that is that back then it did feel a bit like, beating a drum, and nobody really was like, oh, there's a bit of a noise over there, and get back to what they were doing. So yes, now everybody knows about the climate chaos, and some people are perhaps a little bit in denial, but you can't ignore it, right? So of course there's a massive shift in consciousness and awareness. Well, the problem is that not many people are doing anything about it. So we all know about it, and it's mainstream news. Certainly in the UK. I mean, I can't pretend to know what it's like around the rest of the world. But David Attenborough, Blue Planet, the BBC have been absolutely fundamental in the consciousness shift in our country. Even Trump, when he pulled out of the Paris Agreement, it was the biggest advert that we could have got for other countries committing to the Paris Agreement. It was amazing. So. But I think what we've really lost connection with is the adverts that nature gives us, nearly every week now, whether it's a flood, whether it's 500 million species dying in Australian fires, whether it's the Amazon jungle burning down, it's like every day there is something that happens on the planet that is the biggest advert that we're still like, slow boiling frogs in the water that's getting hotter and hotter every day and are not jumping out. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. So we're all crazy, really, as a species, because we're just, we're not kind of trying to mitigate it on scale as a collective species. So sorry for my rant, but obviously I'm clearly really passionate about this, and I feel like it's my duty to try and wake people up, which is a bit like going back to your first, bit of inspiration, which was, let's try and live in hope, and let's keep it up, let's keep it upbeat, and we're going to die, right? And the planet is going to do what it needs to do. So we either think, okay, are we going to go out with a bang, or are we going to, try and do every single thing that we can within our power to try and mitigate this issue, which we can with resilience, with, restoration, regeneration, living completely differently? Are we just going to carry on like this and go, oh dear, never mind? It's such a big issue. The most important thing is every single person can individually take responsibility. So although it's a big issue, we can only ever change ourselves. Like, we can only ever change the things that we do ourselves. And that's what my mission is about, is trying to inspire people to make those small changes, because that they are big changes if everybody does it.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think is the biggest impediment to real action now? So we've had the science for a number of years. I mean, people have been screaming about how kind of anthropogenic climate change happens for over 100 years. And then in the last kind of, let's say, 50, it's become more clear. And in the last 20, in the last 10, it's become it's not possible to argue with the science. It's very, very clear. I mean, there's obviously, we're looking at stochastic models forecasting the future. There's lots of uncertainty. It's a complex adaptive system. But the fact is that we know that human behavior is changing the planet, and that we are warming the planet in a way that we haven't seen in the last 800,000 years. So the evidence is there. Pretty much everybody knows it. Why isn't the change being made?
Yeah, I mean, it's the systems that, it's a shame that the systems that we've built in order to what we call kind of live a lifestyle, they're completely dysfunctional and they're completely disconnected from nature. So we've got, complete systemic change, and that comes into, it starts at the very basics, and then it moves into, the very, very important things. But unless we can change, the governments and the way that they operate and the way that, what's the word I'm looking for? The very economic system that seems to drive our planet is completely buggered. So that's got to change. And if you think about it, economics is just very simply a man-made concept. So what I think we need to do is go back to the times before the man-made concepts started to come in, because economics, industrialization, all of this stuff is we're completely detached from the reality of what's going on. So it's a massively loaded question, and I do have some answers to it. But I think what we've never had is a global awareness and opportunity like we've just had from the recent pandemic. It's the first time globally we've been able to actually experience collectively cause and effect, i.e., stop going to work, we stop flying, air quality, air pollution, goes away. I mean, the unfortunate thing is we just posted a news story today on My Green Pod. The science is now showing that the air quality is back. The pollution is back to where it was before the pandemic already.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's really sad. So what we've got to do is we've got to completely change, the big systems that are, really based around fossil fuel industry. And that's a big one. It's because it's all money and power driven. And unless we can stop feeding the system, and that's where real people can come in, is like we can stop feeding the system, but we are going to have to take a few hits on the chin and change our lifestyles and stop living like we're thinking we're kings, and it's kings and queens. Actually, it's not just a male thing. So
thank you.
So, I completely agree. We need a whole systemic change. It's the model, the economic model that we have now is just built around using profit and financial indicators of whether something's good or not. So should we build this mine?
Exactly.
The only question is, well, does it make more money than it costs? But what we haven't done is think about the bigger picture, which is what about the social implications and the environmental implications? Those need to be brought in and factored into the equation as well. So there's lots of stuff that we need to do on the big scale. But what about, you mentioned before that people who take individual actions collectively adds up to kind of giant change on a global scale. And like you said, we've seen COVID has changed the behavior and lifestyle of basically the whole planet very, very quickly. So when there's the real will, people take giant change. Their governments will make laws that we didn't even think were possible, like you're not allowed to go outside anymore. People will not leave their house. All stuff that we thought was impossible, but then COVID comes around, which has been tragic, but pales in significance to the climate-related problems and sustainability. So what can people do? What are the big things that you think are easy, kind of maybe not easy things, but most important things to start with? Because for some people, the reality is a lot of people have loads of stuff going on in their life. They've got kids, they've got a job, they do want to do the right thing, but they just don't really know where to start. So what should they be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I guess we're probably well equipped to answer that, because we've been following the conscious shopper, if you like, for 14 years. There are 6 things that people are willing to change in their lifestyles very quickly. It's what do they put in their bodies? What do you put on your body? What do you use in your home? How do you buy your energy? How do you travel from A to B, and how do you go on holiday? They're the 6 things that people are willing to commit to changes. So, and if you can ask those questions to yourself, and maybe you can list those, points actually in some kind of thing that people can look at. But, people are starting to eat differently. Definitely the younger generations are coming in with more of an awareness about the factory farmed foods and things like that. So we've got to change that. So that's something we can all do, is eat less factory farmed food. what are you using on your body? Now, but the big thing is that, most people are trying to buy, not most actually, because of course it's all a price point. Some people are trying to buy products that are more conscious, if you like, less plastic. The real problem is the ingredients in the products that we're buying. So, there's liquid plastics, polymers, there's toxic chemicals, there's all this kind of stuff. So people really need to try and buy accredited organic or soil association certification products that they're putting on their bodies. Organic shampoos, natural skincare, toothpaste, deodorants, that kind of stuff. Yeah, the plastic thing is an issue, but it's not as big an issue as the toxic chemicals in the ingredients. There's a use for plastic. We're becoming clever at recycling it, and it's an infinite resource. We can keep reusing it. There's a lot of it out there already, so let's just keep using it. So don't think plastic is going to save the planet. It's not. The other one is what ingredients are you using in your home? So, most people's homes are more toxic on the inside than the air on the outside. Why? Because of the amount of different cleaning products that they're using, and this fusion of those chemicals that creates this kind of super fusion of toxicity. I mean, it's profound. These big companies that are making these products that are actually doing more harm to us than good. And actually, I'm sorry, I could go on about this because I'm an expert in this stuff. This is what we kind of see ourselves as being, real thought leaders in. But I think what we can do is actually change our mindset. I feel this is a better and easier thing to do, right? If every decision that you make in terms of when you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you go to the toilet, you have a bit of toast, you have an apple, you drink some coffee, you go to work, you put your clothes on, all that stuff. If you can just think about nature in every aspect of that decision-making process that you go through each day, is the toothpaste that I'm using, is it harmful to nature, or is it actually, including nature in its process? Is this t-shirt that I've just put on, is that bleached, and is it damaged? Is it damaged nature in its process, or is it actually respecting nature? Has it got natural food dyes? Has it got, there's a kind of, I think there's a mindset that we need to change. And it's like, could nature be our decision maker? And are we happy to fall in with that co-creation with nature as we make those decisions? And I reckon, and you can quote me on this because it's now going to go live, I reckon if we include nature in our thought process and our simple decision making, just by acknowledging the very fact that nature's or the earth has created this product that we're using, I reckon she'll step up and completely fix the issues that we are calling climate crisis, because that's a first step of reconnecting. And I reckon she'll just go, okay, yeah, these guys actually do mean what they're saying because they're acknowledging me in their thought process. Let's start to transform things, because nature's miraculous. We can't even begin to get our heads around how amazing nature is. Because if we did, we definitely wouldn't be treating the earth and the planet and nature in the way that we do, by using up all the resources and not even caring about consequence. So my thing is this: when you take from nature, try and give back. So even with a thought or with a process, i.e. buy something and plant a tree, or buy something from a company that's planting a tree, like we do at My Green Pod. Every transaction, we plant a tree for every single purchase. If Amazon did that, we would literally not be in the situation that we're in, because they would have planted, probably 1 trillion trees, which is about a third of the trees that have been ripped out of the planet. So that in itself would mitigate the carbon issues that we have about rising temperatures. Sorry for such a long answer.
No, it's really good. I think people...
It's really important, though.
Yeah.
So there's another bit to this, right? And I think this is really, really important. This is something that I'm working on now, because businesses have a huge responsibility, right? To be able to give people products that are much more in balance with nature. So here's the big thing. If we can make the earth our chairman, right? And the CEO, if we can make the earth our chairman and the board the feminine principles, because I think we've lost touch as a species to the feminine principles of compassion and love and unity and, and receiving and allowing and, all of that stuff, right? And then if we can make the earth, so chairman, the earth, the board, the feminine principles, and then nature, the CEO, and then humanity, the team. If that could be our new business model, then it would change everything.
I'd love that.
I think that's a great way to think about it. And it is really encouraging to see that some companies are getting it. We're not moving quickly enough, but there's all the different actors in this, being kind of the general population, government, and business, which are the really three big parts of this. There's exciting things going on in each of them. I think we'd all agree that it's probably not moving quick enough, but at least there are some exciting things. Like, Becca, last week you brought the article about the fact that they're installing the right to repair. So if you sell stuff, like now when companies make things like technology, like TVs or refrigerators, there's planned obsolescence. They make it so it breaks in a few years, so you have to buy a new one. And now they're changing that. This idea of the circular economy, which is going to be so crucial to fixing the problem, taking a bit, exactly like you mentioned before, at your kind of your TV show. How can we use the waste from one product as the input for the new product? And we're starting to see bits of that coming through in a number of different places, from the government, from individuals, and from businesses too. So a lot of companies are starting to do that, to take things back, whether it be in clothing or in so many different areas. But what are you seeing that's encouraging you? What do you see that excites you about people's action that they're taking towards sustainability?
Wow, there's what's really encouraging is that there are, in the sector that we're in, there are new products from entrepreneurial business people that are, quite disruptive in the grand scheme of our economic, consumer behavioral system, and that is just brilliant because, if we can encourage people to buy more locally and get more in touch with the brands and the manufacturers that are providing these quite disruptive products in the big game, then that has a huge knock-on effect, and it creates a system that is perhaps more reflective of the ecosystem that has become damaged in nature, right? So I'm feeling like what I'm seeing is we are beginning to replicate or mimic nature in the way that its ecosystem is unbalanced, but is kind of should be balanced. And I think that's really, really very cool. So we are seeing this reuse economy. We are seeing this, this non-toxic, cleaner products situation. We are seeing, younger generations certainly, and some more, becoming more plant-based eaters, because it's just, they're kind of born into a time where it's like you kind of have to, otherwise you're part of the problem and not a solution, right? So I'm really encouraged by that kind of grassroots movement that's going on. What I'm less encouraged about is governments and big business, because they actually could turn things around very, very quickly if they committed to it. They can make money, quantitative easing, make enough money to fix the problem then. It's like, it is actually really very simple if we really wanted to deal with it. So I think we've got to, drive the storyline and the narrative. And we do that by, how we live and what our lifestyles are. And that we have the power because we're actually the majority. The people, the grassroots people are the majority. We're feeding all these systems that are not serving us. So if we pull our money out from these systems and put them into other systems that are, better for the future generations, that's the power that we've got as individuals. It's such a big story.
Don't get despondent, Jarvis.
No, I think you're absolutely right.
We'll be all right in the end.
There's the democratic power that we have. The fact that the way we kind of forget, being in the weeds, what our government really means. The way that a democracy is meant to work is that everyone is supposed to have a say. It just happens that there's so many of us that it's not practical for 50 million people to go down to Westminster and put their hand up if they agree. So we elect a representative, but their job is to reflect the will of their constituents, not to stay in power for another term or lobby for business. So we really need to think about that and realize how important our political voices, and if people aren't representing us, then vote them out and engage in politics, but then also to vote with your wallet as well, which kind of works with a lot of the work that you do. So you can choose to buy from brands who embrace this like new way of thinking about sustainability. And I think that the sharing economy is really, really exciting. And Becca, having set up Tench Air, I think that's a really good example of the fact that we don't need all these resources to keep buying tents. A lot of people will buy a tent, they'll use it a few times in summer, and then otherwise keep it in the shed. But why not instead share what we've got and turn it into an asset? I think, Becca, you did a really good job of talking about the benefits. Maybe you want to just talk a little bit about Tench Air and your idea and the sharing economy.
Yeah, so to pick up what Jarvis was saying, that there's some new ideas coming through and they're quite disruptive. And I think Tench Air is possibly one of those business models because it's based on the sharing economy. So the money doesn't go up to one fat cat who receives all the money. What it allows is for people to have their own asset, in this instance, the tent, and for people to be able to make money from it. But also you're not feeding, but you're spreading the wealth in a localized area. So someone who wants to rent a tent will probably rent from someone who is in their local area, or they can go to the place, and then if they're going to be a tourist there, not only are they spending their money there, but they're spending money with people who live in that local area. And so I think people find that concept tricky because people keep saying to me, why don't you just buy loads of tents and then you can rent them out and then you get all the profit? It's like, you've totally missing the point here. You know, the point is that we're reusing resources. I'm not going and buying 20 tents to then rent out. I'm using the resources we already have and allowing people to make wealth from that. So that's my thought about it anyway.
Well, that's the smart way to do it. I'm completely on board, Becca.
Me too. I love it, and it's that thinking, isn't it? It's that mindset that is actually gonna mitigate the most serious issue of humanity's time. And the problem is that we the way societies have been set up, it's like it's that different mentality, particularly in business and consumption and this kind of model around consumerism. It
does need to work, like you say. It needs to work on a business level for it to be taken seriously in this current society.
Yeah,
and that's that's a thing that has to happen, I think. But
there
are loads of sharing economy companies coming through. There's a car share one in Bristol called Car Share, and he's doing brilliant things. So you can just borrow. He's got an app. You can just borrow a car, put it on your app that you want to use the car, and you can just go and get it and then start driving it and then bring it back or leave it in the place. That's amazing. Who else? There's loads. Oh, Ed, of course, and his camper vans. He's exactly the same. He's sharing the wealth and allowing people to make money from their camper vans. And it's been
and we know the model, don't we? We know the model because of Airbnb. I mean, everyone, everyone's been in an Airbnb. It's like, and Uber actually, which we talked about at the beginning. It's another. It's the kind of gig or sharing economy. It's still kind of the same thing, isn't it?
But people said about Airbnb, it will never work. Who's going to rent out their own home? Who's going to rent out their own space? They were told it would never work. And
look how successful it's been.
It's really that mindset shift again. It's the fact that we didn't think that was possible. If you'd have asked 10 people on the street, will you rent your home out to a stranger for 50 quid? You'd say, no, I would never do that. But then as soon as other people do it, there's that kind of social buy-in. Well, other people are doing it, so it must be fine. And then it just educates us about what's kind of normal, what's acceptable, what's a good What's a safe thing to do? What should we be doing? So I think Airbnb have done a lot for springboarding this whole idea, because so many businesses have been launched and they're described as that we are the Airbnb of X. So it really, I think, did create this mindset shift where people are thinking about how can I use that marketplace type mentality, and yeah, with what you guys are doing on your website as well, you're doing, I think, a kind of similar thing. You are instead taking, so Jarvis, you can tell us a little bit more about the specifics, but I think you actually go and meet the people who come on your kind of marketplace to sell and form a relationship and check that they really do walk the walk, because greenwashing and impact washing is massive. Everybody, it's kind of a marketer's dream. People who don't really believe in this stuff just think, oh, a new way to entice people and sell to people. This will be or they're just worried that they'll be left behind because they know that the consumer is more conscious now. So you certainly have to be thoughtful of that. But yeah, what advice do you think you'd give to people for making sure that they're on board when they're choosing who to buy from?
My Green Pod.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I would recommend, our site. I mean, there are others out there that are, pretty good. Nothing's perfect. When you're buying stuff, nothing's perfect. Perfection is not buying anything at all, right? Or growing it, in organic soil on your land. That's perfection. So the next step of that is, okay, if you need to buy something, do you actually need to buy it new? Or can you get it from eBay, or can you get it from a charity, shop when we're allowed to shop again? That's kind of number two. And then, okay, so if you do need something new, then at least buy the least toxic, product available. So what we do at My Green Pod is we find the best products that we possibly can for their use. And we just have one or two options to make it very simple for people that want to make a lifestyle shift and switch from a product that might be damaging them or the planet, and switch to something that has less damage to them and the planet. And so I think the point of that is that we have very, very high standards when it comes to picking ingredients. So that's number one. I mean, my wife, Katie, she used to be deputy editor at Which. So, she really understands, what is the best that it can be, because she's an investigative journalist. That's her skill set. But then we take it deeper than that. So firstly, we find you the best products. We don't have many of them, so we make it very simple for you to make a choice. We plant a tree every time you buy from us, so we're giving back to nature when you take. But what I think we really pride ourselves in is exactly that, is meeting the founders behind the products. So to give you a really good example of this, and most people still are not fully aware of this, a lot of people buy Ecova and Method products because they're in the supermarket shelves. We know they're eco. It's a convenience thing, so you buy it, right? The problem is that those products, those brands, are owned by SC Johnson, and SC Johnson's global sustainability initiative is crap. It's really bad. And they still test on animals and stuff like that in other countries. And, so it's not a good company. So you're buying a product that is pretty good for the environment, but you're funding a company that doesn't care about your kid's future, right? So what we do is we eliminate that process. So we won't have products on there that are owned by big conglomerates that don't care about anything, globally. They might care about it in England. It's a bit like McDonald's, yeah, talking about stuff in UK about organic, but go and see what they're doing in other countries. It's diabolical. Same with Pepsi and Coca-Cola, and the list goes on. So big companies are only doing this kind of greenwashing thing in the UK is because they know consumers, and I hate the word consumers because we're actually people that like to shop, but are branded as consumers. They're changing their narrative. They're changing the way that they do things. So these big companies are going, oh, look at us, aren't we great? Yeah, we wouldn't. I mean, I think there's one product, out there that is pretty good, owned by a big company, or maybe a few now. But, Pocketees, for example, it's a fantastic product. I know the owners, I know the founders. Then they sold to Unilever, and, so what are Unilever going to do with the product? Who knows? So I think what we're trying to do is make it simple and keeping it real and always transparent. So we'll get a product, and here's a great example. lots and lots of new brands came out to try and deal with the plastic issue, right? So they came up with these kind of reusable containers, a subscription type service, a sachet, refillable sachet, whatever it might be, right? But 99% of the ones that we've had through our doors are not dealing with the much more serious issue, which is the toxic chemicals and ingredients within the cleaning product itself, right? So you've got all these kind of quite slick subscription services that are dealing with the plastic issue, but the toxicity of the ingredients in the products are worse than the products that you would probably consider buying, from your high street. And we eliminate that. We don't buy into anything. If people can't tell us what the ingredient is and where it comes from, then we won't have it on our platform. It's as simple as that. So there's one called parfum, right? That you'll often see products. It'd be a nice, clean, natural product, but it will have parfum in it. It's like, well, what is that? It's obviously some kind of toxic chemical scent. And if they can't tell us it's a natural perfume, then we won't have it on the site. So that's what we do. We take the hassle out of choosing clean products. Now, often they are a bit more expensive, but the quality and the cost per use is often better. So it's like you might pay a bit more up front, but actually you get to use that shampoo bar as you would for 2 bottles of shampoo. And it's like, because it lasts that long, it's like, so it's just, again, it's back to mindset.
I love your site because when I'm looking for something, I go straight to your site and have a look what you have chosen, because I know you've done all the research for me.
Yeah.
So I don't have to worry about greenwashing. And
I think that's it. And I can tell very quickly by being on a call, having done this for so long, I can tell very quickly whether somebody's in it because they're in it for purpose and values, or whether they're in it to cash in. Honestly, I can tell within about three questions, I can tell. And that's,
Oh, Jarvis, can you tell us that quote? The Consumerist quote.
Yeah, I can. I'm going to have to look it up, but essentially there was no, it's really important because there was it's why I don't like the word consumer. There was an economist that came, a guy called Victor Lebeau, who was a very, very clever economist, and a kind of, I guess, a bit of a kind of advertising man back in the day, and essentially they created the kind of economic model that we that all brands and all business models and we're all bought into, that consumers live by today. And the quote is this, and it might take me a second to get up. So first of all, the term consumer, it embodies the word consume, and to some analysis of the word consume means to use up until it's gone, right? So to be a consumer, it means that you are buying into using something until it's gone. That can't be a good thing for us to be buying, for us to be labeling ourselves as, right? So that took me on a little journey. And the journey was that I came across this information, right? And the quote is, and it's just taking me a little bit long, so I'm waffling on a bit until this opens. But the quote is, come on, computer.
This is adding to the suspense. This is good. This is how everyone...
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun. Right, here we go. So, oh God, now it's done. Okay, here we go. Our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life, that we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfaction, our ego satisfaction in consumption. We need things consumed, burned up, replaced, and discarded at an ever accelerating rate. Now that is what our current economic system is built on. So we are buying into stuff that we probably don't really need, but the advertising and the manipulation has become so slick that we think we need it. So the really good example of this is pandemic arrives, we commit to buying essential goods only, non-essential goods come off the shelves, the economy pretty much collapses. So 80% of the stuff that is funding our economic system is non-essential. It's just there to fund the economic system that we're bought into. That is just ludicrous.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to think about it. When we stop buying the things that we don't need, everything goes to shit. And
everything went to shit.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think I might have seen that in Donut Economics, or maybe it was another one. So I was just about to ask you about kind of good resources. But yeah, I highly recommend Donut Economics by Kate Raworth. Really, really, really good book.
Agreed.
About kind of zooming out and dilating on that issue of consumerism. So we used to be hunter and gatherers, then we had religion, and that's what gave us our kind of spiritual and community. And then then we had like the God is dead after Nietzsche, and then what were we left with? Well, consumerism, and that was our way to kind of get exactly like you were talking about then, to get not only our kind of spiritual needs, but also our social needs by signaling against other people, by showing what we've got, by accumulating things. And then now we're at this junction where we've crossed over and realized, well, accumulating a lot of stuff doesn't make us happy. And instead, people are now demanding that their values are reflected on what they buy. And that's not the case of a consumer. A consumer is just buying more things because they're accumulating. Whereas now we're saying, I want the way that I spend my money to reflect the person that I am, not in a kind of luxury sense, but in what do I believe on kind of a moral sense. And I think that's a very exciting transition that we've kind of or are moving as a society to that much more kind of higher level of consciousness, as some people would say. But on the resources point, are there any books, websites, and other things that if people are really interested in this stuff that you recommend that they go and check out?
Well, just to backtrack a little bit on what you just said, because that was beautifully put, and I love the way you speak. You're incredibly articulate, and you use really great words that I understand, but probably don't have the ability to use myself. But it's really fascinating, and you're a very clued up guy. And what you've just said there is perfect, because my green pod is being, if you shop with us, you're part of something bigger than yourselves. The pod is a collective, right? It's a group of, in our case, it's kind of seeds, if you like, because we're seeding a new consciousness, a new way of being. I call it restorative retail, but you're absolutely right. It's conscious shopping. And what's brilliant is consciousness has evolved tenfold through the pandemic, because people have had to stop doing what they're doing. They've been locked in, so they've had nothing else apart from to be with themselves and their families. And that has evolved. That has created a massive amount of awareness. And so, one of the things that people always used to say to me is, and I will answer your question, I promise. People used to say to me when I was kind of sitting on panels and stuff like that, what's the one thing that you would do to help people and understand? The first thing I always said is, we've got to get people to stop. Unless they stop just for a minute to see what happens when we stop, then we're never, ever going to fix this. So that came true for me. Honestly, I didn't think I'd see that in my lifetime. I thought I'd be teaching my children it and they would probably see it in theirs. But the point of that is that once you stop and you see cause and effect, and you get to actually have the experiential response to it, which we've all now had, right, globally, en masse, then you need to get yourself clued up, right? You've got to go out and you've got to do the research. And, the internet of all things is the perfect way to do your research. You can find out what you need to find out these days very quickly. So it's like, my answer to your question would be, actually, and I will get back to resources, is, if we can get everybody to understand what they love doing and what they're really good at, if they could use that skill then to mitigate the climate crisis, even if it's just for the next 8 years, and for them to live their purpose, that's their purpose, they commit to that being their purpose. Could you imagine how every human being would be living on the planet, doing what they love for a bigger cause than for themselves, and you've got a purpose? Even if we died, we'd go out with a freaking party, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I love that idea. And I think it is really exciting to see more people jumping on this mission. Like we kind of all 3 mission-driven businesses. They are kind of still businesses, but you're in kind of regenerative retail. I really think of what Call to Adventure does as regenerative travel. So there's lots of intricacies and interesting stuff. It's really, adventure is something very different in itself as well. It requires that you remove yourself from the everyday, that you question things that you normally don't question. So you go into new areas kind of physically, but also mentally as well, and challenge yourself and experience fear and hunger and all this stuff that we don't normally experience on an everyday level, going to the office and days melding into each other. So I think it's adventure specifically, not travel, that really helps us do that. And then visiting new places, learning about new cultures, but also, the mental and physical benefits of being outside as well. But there's more and more businesses kind of doing this thing, taking this regenerative approach. So for me, I think it's a very, very exciting time. And then, Tench Air as well, jumping on the sharing economy. So I think it's a good time in some ways to be alive. If we're going to be the ones who do save humanity, then what a good claim to fame that will be.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, this is. You got to look at it like, have 8 billion people causing the problem, or have 8 billion people come to try and see if we can fix the problem. That's the way I would look at it, because we are so incredibly resourceful if we are set to the challenge. And I think
I have great faith, like you say, when COVID hit, the impossible was made possible.
Yeah, exactly.
All children coming home and not going to school anymore. That would never happen, but it did.
It did. It did.
And it just proves that it can happen. You can actually make anything possible.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the way it was you kind of marketed, if you like, because that's essentially what the news is, and the government kind of 3 statements are. It's marketing. It was all about the science says. We're listening to the science. We're going to respond to what the science says, all of that stuff. And climate crisis is all about the science. It's like, so you can see very quickly that we've now been conditioned to not live chaotically in terms of, kind of addicted to non-essential consumerism. So number one, so they've already tested that. Whoever is the God in this, they've already tested us. Are we capable of that? Yes. Are they willing to listen to the science? Yes. First time we've ever experienced cause. There is clearly some super force. If you believe in God or, the source or, whatever it is for you, there is clearly some higher force at work here, right?
Nature.
And I think we are being invited as a species to evolve. And the only way we evolve is to become reunited and re-respectful and stop the kind of war-driven consciousness that we've been living, and stop dogma around religion, and just all put down everything that we need to put down so we can work on the problem together. And we'll probably come out the other end and go, that was a tough one, but Jesus, we've actually found we all love each other, and we're like, we're all part of this, and because it's a delicate environment that we live on. It's showing how fragile it is now, actually. So maybe this is about human evolution. Maybe that's what we signed up for. I'm getting a bit spiritual now, but that is my background.
No, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. It's just, I think we all have some sort of feeling. People that I'm talking to have some feeling that there is a change. It's just whether we can make it a really positive one.
Yeah.
And change in enough time.
Yeah. Well, whatever it'll be an experience that we learn from. Whether it's, it's like, most people learn from adversity. Most people learn from the biggest challenge of their time. That's like always the wake up call in shamanic principles, which I trained in, and, in the sages in India and the sadhus and all of that. They all put themselves into the most difficult, extreme situation so that they can evolve. So you'll bury yourself underground for 7 days, or you'll go out into nature for 40 days without food and water. And that's how we evolve. What's happened is we've just had a little bit of a dip of a toe in a collective evolutionary spiritual process. No one's really talking about that, but it's absolutely matter of fact. That's what's happened. Yeah. And we are spiritual beings that are perhaps carnated into a physical body. I do believe, I very strong believe that the spirit lives on and, does whatever it decides to do next, So, but that's, I'm half Indian, and I'm very connected with that kind of, Bhagavad Gita type, Sanskrit type, Hinduism type, I'm not Hindu at all. I'm not religious at all, but I'm very connected to those kind of, core spiritual lineages. And the problem is man got in the way, started to control it so that they control the environment, the religions, the politics, the businesses, the whole thing. And that's just messed everything up. Okay, we tried that. It didn't work. Let's get back to basics. And how can we evolve?
I would love to just hear a little bit about, I can't leave the conversation without hearing a bit more about your experience in shamanism. Can you just delve into it quickly? I would love to hear a little bit more about it before we let you go.
Yeah, thank you, because that actually is the thing that drives everything that I am as a being, right? So I studied with a female shaman in England, not an ayahuasca trip. I've never done plant medicines or anything like that. What shaman simply means is the wise person of the village, the person that's able to communicate with nature and access the kind of sacred skills, right? So I was trained in shamanism in a sense that, yoga was a yoga meditation. I now do a daily kriya. I listen to nature. I try and understand what nature's teaching me. I listen to the wind. I listen to the trees. All of that stuff. That's all shamanic practice, right? I'm well trained in that. 14 years I trained with a female shaman. That was everything I did before I got into business. So my whole business is based on shamanic, natural, what I would describe as universal laws and not man-made concepts. So our business has always been about inclusion. It's been about working with everybody that's part of this journey. It's been about, giving our customers the best way that they can reconnect with nature through the way that they buy and use our products. It's all built on those principles. But essentially, my training was deprogramming my upbringing, number one, reprogramming so that I can connect with something rather than, just the education and things that I was taught in my mind. I'm sorry, I'm pointing to my head. I realize people are not going to be able to see me pointing to my head. So I'm tapping on my head if that's so the mind is like a hard drive. The heart and the gut and the full beingness of ourselves is the consciousness, is the way that we interact with everything around us. So the fact that we're just teaching the mind to learn and remember and repetitive and, that's kind of no good, because what we're trying to do collectively is fix the problem with the same thinking that caused it in the first place. So my shamanic teaching has taught me to listen to something else that I don't yet know. And if every human being is willing to trust and go into the space of trying to, evolve and fix this problem with the unknown, then we might just have an opportunity to fix it, because we're seeing that trying to fix it with the very systems that caused it in the first place are just not working. So that's kind of a bit of an insight to the shamanic principles about how I live. But one thing I will say is every single day, without fail, I will ask for guidance from my incarnate team. You can call them angels or guides or whatever you want to call them. And I make sure that I have a system reset and raise my frequency every single day before I start anything to do with work or how I'm going to operate that day.
Well,
do you do that as a ritual?
It's a ritual, yeah. And I think that's the gift. It's part of the ritual. It's not the practice, it's the ritual.
I would say for me, one of the biggest things that has improved the quality of my life, of everything, is just a daily meditation practice. And I've talked about it quite a lot in the past, and I know it's kind of in vogue, but it really is incredibly powerful. So for people who maybe haven't tried it before, I found Headspace really good for learning meditation and Vipassana specifically. And then Sam Harris's Waking Up app for some more advanced stuff, moving on to Dzogchen and more thinking about the nature of reality. And it's endlessly fascinating. So, I encourage anybody, regardless of your thoughts on religion or spirituality, it doesn't have to be spiritual at all. It's just an inquisition into your own mind and the nature of reality. So I would highly encourage people to check that out. And it's also just a good kind of reset every day before you kick off with the trials and tribulations of life. So thank you both for coming on the show. It's been really, really awesome. Jarvis, it's been great to hear about what you're up to and your history. And I'd love to talk again and go really deep into your shamanism stuff. And so I'm sure we'll chat again if you're keen. But yeah, thanks for coming on.
I'd love to, George. It was a really enlightening speaking to you. I mean, you're a wonderful being, and the meditation just really brought it all together. And that's, it's a very powerful part of my life. So thank you for closing with that. I'd love to come and talk to you about my shamanic journey. I mean, it was a trip and a half without all the plant medicine. So, and Rebecca, thank you for having me. It was just, I just really appreciate you guys having me on, and it's been a lovely conversation. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for agreeing to spend this time with us, because I know how precious your time is and how busy you are. And you've got your new little baby.
Yes, you were going to ask me about our newborn. He's 5 weeks old now. And we've got a 5-year-old and a 5-week, or nearly 6 weeks old. And he's amazing. I mean, it felt to me, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I think when babies are born into a family, they bring in something new. Often parents say they learn from their kids, and I actually really got a sense of it. As soon as he was born, there was this different energy, there was different awareness, different consciousness. And the pivotal moments in my life have always been when a child's been born. So my 13-year-old now was when I went, when I was undumped, she was still in her mum's tummy, right? And that was a pivotal moment. And that, so it's like, it's fascinating that these children are bringing in this new level of consciousness, and we've just got to reattune ourselves to it. And I think that's happening now en masse. So, yeah, as you know, I can just talk forever. I'm sorry. This will be the longest podcast you've ever done. It's like, when is this guy going to shut up?
No, it's been amazing. I
said to George,
really enjoyed it. It's been great. Thank you so much for taking time. And yeah, congratulations on the newborn. That's amazing. How exciting. So, Jarvis, if people want to find out a little bit more about what you're up to, where's the best place for them to check out?
Yeah, so you did ask me about resources earlier, and I would genuinely say if you want to get into a deeper sustainable lifestyle, go to My Green Pod, not to buy stuff. I don't care if you buy stuff, but we've got over 3,500 news pieces on there, which will be on a topic and a subject matter that you care about, that will give you a bit of an insight as to how you can shift your lifestyle in something that you're interested in. So that's a great resource. But to come to us, it's simply mygreenpod.com. We've also launched this Nature TV thing, which is we like to give value on our website. So it's all about giving value. And so what we did is we realized that people couldn't connect with nature as much because they were kind of a bit more housebound because of the lockdown. So we created this bit of tongue-in-cheek films, if you like, of nature. And there's 3 of them. And Rebecca, I think, has watched them a few times. And we've got 2 hours of rock. We've got 2 hours of a babbling brook. And we've got 2 hours of sheep in a field. And essentially, you go to mygreenpod.com/nature TV and just have it on whilst you're Zooming or whilst you're working or, whilst you're doing. And it's scientifically proven that this will actually give you a better sense of well-being and will help your mental health. So, we did that bit of a joke, and as I've run a bit of an advert on it, and it's kind of just taking the mickey a little bit, but actually with really a serious, very serious issue. So, hopefully that will help people to find us and not think they have to come and shop, because that's not what it's about. I'd rather you didn't buy anything. It's much better for the planet.
I did have a watch of the...
I think you should set up
Sorry, Becca, go ahead.
Sorry, George.
No worries. It's hard when we're all on a call, isn't it? Don't worry at all. I will just say I did have a watch of The Rock earlier and Nature TV, and it was amazing. I was kind of like, is something going to happen? And I showed my girlfriend, who's also very into sustainability and upcycling, and she was like, I love this guy. This is amazing. Just thought it was so cool that you'd made a video 2 hours long about a rock and a sheep. She was like, this is incredible. So highly recommend people check that out. Rebecca, please. What?
Jarvis, I think you need to put a poll up, because I thought I was going to love the brook, and when I've watched all 3, it's definitely the rock. And I think, Jarvis, you're getting a feeling that it's rock is the winner at the moment. But you should definitely get a poll going.
Yeah, so from the stats, The Rock has had more views. And we're, some days we're getting into thousands of people at one single moment connecting with our Nature TV. Right? It's just incredible to watch. So clearly it's working. People are not only doing it once, but they're doing it again, which is brilliant. But so far, the stats are showing the rock as the favourite. I mean, we've not even started with this campaign; it's just the very beginning of it. So we want it to just go viral in a sense, and it's quite an interesting thing. So I think we'll film something one day, whatever that might be, a tree swaying around in the wind, or I don't know what it's going to be, but something will just really capture people's imaginations and it'll go viral. So, and that could be in my lifetime or it might not be, but it will happen.
Everybody check it out. It's strangely incredible and addictive. So yeah, definitely take a look. Thank you so much for coming on both. And Becca, thanks for co-hosting. If people are interested, they can always go and book or rent a tent at Tench Air, book or rent your camper at Camp 2. And a big thank you to everybody for listening. Thanks for tuning in. As always, all episodes are available over at calltoadventure.uk. But until next time, thank you again, Jarv. Thank you, Becca. And thanks, listeners, for tuning in. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.